Welcome everyone to today's 20 for Good session on unlocking jobs in the circular economy. And a very warm welcome to Bezawit Eshetu of the African Circular Economy Network and Tracey Gilmore from Taking Care of Business, who joined me today in talking about this very current and opportune topic. The shift towards a circular economy redefines how we produce, how we consume, and how we manage resources. In this session, we will explore innovations that promote sustainable resource use and generate new employment opportunities, from recycling and waste management to creating closed-loop supply chains. We'll showcase examples of how circular economy principles foster entrepreneurship and create green jobs while reducing environmental footprints. As I mentioned, we have with us Tracey Gilmore from Taking Care of Business and Bezawit Eshetu from the African Circular Economy Network. We welcome you both. We will start off with brief presentations from each of you as background and context. Bezawit, let's start with you.
Thank you, Gavin. Minute until my So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Beza, and I work for the ACEN Foundation. I'm based in East Africa. I'm the regional coordinator for East Africa, and I'll briefly share with you what ACEN and ACEN Foundation has been doing for the past 5-6 years to promote circularity in Africa. So our main goal is accelerating the transition, which is going to be inevitable in an inclusive, circular, and sustainable way in Africa. Just to give you a background, so ACEN Foundation is a coalition of two organizations, Tranomics and African Circular Economy Network. So basically, those two organizations, one is based in Europe and the other one is based in almost 47 African countries. We have a representation of 47 focal points in different African countries, both in Francophone and Anglophone countries. So together we come together to work on, as a foundation, we come as a partners to develop, to promote and develop circular projects. Briefly, what as I said, our vision at the end of along the journey is accelerating the transition to be an inclusive and equitable, just and fair for all involved, both from the developed and developing nations. How do we do that? It's through technical assistance, by providing technical advisory services, and by continuing to grow networks of experts and partners who could really fast track this traction. And most importantly, we develop capacity of different stakeholder groups. It could be institutional, individual, government, or even financial institutions. Our last vision is all these processes should be anchored to concrete projects and pilot projects to showcase if circular economy is actually a business model or an economic model that could really create opportunities, the envisaged opportunities, and create the local value creation is envisaged also. Our objective is to build capacity, summarizing it again: capacity building, knowledge transfer and collaboration, supporting incubation and business support programs, developing projects and implement them, and of course financing, developing financial schemes on how to finance these initiatives. Just to let you know, circular economy is not really new in the continent, but the context of it being having an additional layer of being innovation brings to the table an additional component or a project pillar that focuses on designing relatively more focused circular business models and projects. There are so many projects that have been working on that we have been working on in different African countries. We'll share this slide so that you could have an understanding of what kind of circular projects that we've been running, but mostly it relies on renewable energy, productive use of renewable energies, making sure regenerative agriculture is in place, um, piloting business models, and assessing sectoral based approach of which sectors could actually be low hanging fruits to promote circularity. For example, one thing that we are actually very actively engaged is promoting black soldier fly technology in 3 different African countries. From the economic point of view, like it produces products that could be sold and generate income. It produces agricultural regeneration through the forest, and it also creates an opportunity to absorb greenhouse gas emissions. It's just a simple black soldier fly technology that could address all pillars and concepts of circularity. So that's our first, and we're looking forward to make sure that it is a continuous effort. So far, we have been working on national roadmaps, circular economy roadmaps for different African countries, and then also a continental roadmap and action plan for the African Union. Obviously, things at the regional level have a larger scale and lack the context of the virtue of contextualizing it for different countries' context and priorities and needs. So currently, we are trying to cascade to different African countries the what action plans and recommendations were made for the African Union roadmap. And then also we do market studies. At the end of the day, we're talking about economy, and this economy that we're trying to promote should be accompanied with market studies that highlights business opportunities. For example, in the agriculture sector, manufacturing sector, and plastics and packaging. These are the sectors that we believe will bring the required impact that could convince policymakers, decision makers, and most importantly, governments to really transform towards circularity. So we do those kind of studies for different African countries. This is also a continuation. So we the roadmap development is a continuous effort. We're not yet done with all the 54 African countries, but the hope is to do so, and we'll do that. We're doing those projects in support with support from bilateral and multilateral organizations and financial institutions like GIZ, UNIDO, African Development Bank, and regional entities like SADC, ICRI, ECOWAS, and those kind of organizations. Um, Trying to frame how we do things, it's a bottom-up approach and bottom-up approach and top-down approach. How we do those projects is from top to bottom. We strengthen policy, regulatory, financial incentives to make sure that we have the actual um, enabling environment there, and also the government placed in place to do so. We also do cost benefit analysis to make it more economically enticing for whoever is trying to uh, pick up the bat. We want to make sure that the cost benefit analysis clearly shows the pros and cons of the, identifying the circular opportunities. Identification of hotspot sectors and countries. Actually, not everyone is at the level of transition at the same level, so we try to kind of encourage the ones who have already been in a position to showcase, yes, circularity can work. So we call them circular hotspot countries. So last year, the year before, it was Lagos. This year it is Cape Town, South Africa, and next year it will be in Ethiopia. But it's just to showcase what those hotspots are doing. It's not like they are the only centers, but it is to show that there is an opportunity to replicate what's happening there. More on a concrete level, we promote product innovation and redesign for capacity for designers, manufacturers, producers, all of them, almost all parts of the society and stakeholders, because we believe what makes circular different from the green and blue economies is the innovation part that calls out for the need for designing new products and services. So we focus on promoting those kinds of capacity building initiatives. Of course, the awareness and raising and sustainable purchasing practices, especially among government entities. Public procurement constitutes the biggest share of government budget that is allocated every year, and we're trying to promote those kind of things. But also individually, as one person, there are a lot of things that people could influence by changing their behavioral consumption behavior and use of products. So we try to do those from two angles. Last and most importantly, we improve waste management and recycling streams. We have to be very realistic. Before the innovation part is happening in Africa, what is actually low-hanging fruit is the other downstream contents of circularity. It's recycling, reuse, remanufacturing, and refurbishing. And so we focus on those low-hanging points to leverage the transition. Feel free to reach out to check our website and see what more can be done and what we're doing and what you could collaborate with us. And we'd also like to thank the opportunity for the organizers to give us the opportunity to share our work so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Bezawit. So from continent-wide policy reform, capacity building, awareness generating, let's hear from Tracey, who can give us examples of this in action. Tracey, let me hand over to you for your background presentation.
Great, thank you so much. And we are members of ACEN, so thank you, Beza, for that. It's added a lot of value to TCB. Can you see the presentation? Yes.
We can. Feel free to go into, there we go, we can, yes.
Thank you. So Taking Care of Business is an organization. We started in February 2010 when we realized there's a huge amount of surplus stock within the retail supply chain and how we could use that stock as an opportunity for unemployed South Africans to start businesses. So we're very much focused on empowering people who are raising the next generation. So Taking Care of Business is a non-profit social enterprise, and we are equipping South Africans who are aspiring entrepreneurs with the skills and resources needed to unlock their potential and access the circular economy and break that cycle of poverty, especially the intergenerational poverty that we're experiencing in South Africa. Just to give you a little bit of a snapshot of over the last 14 years, we have over 7,000 people have been through our program. We have received over 20 million items which have been diverted from the landfill. And the profits that people have made in the organization, the participants in the organization, including the graduates, have made over 500 million rands worth of profits in their businesses. So there's been a very significant impact. And this is really explaining how that radical collaboration really adds so much value. It's working together. There's nothing we can do on our own. You know, our strategic themes is very much focused on the program. So it's strengthening of our human development and the ecosystem offering, focusing on people, so all of our staff members, and improving the well-being, internal well-being. Partners, we have strength partnerships with our retail partners, funders, and various different stakeholders who add a huge amount of value to TCB. And obviously the process side of things, so making sure that our operations are very structured so that we can really make sure that everything is well organized in the process, because it can get quite chaotic with a whole lot of waste as a resource. So we have to be very structured. And performance is obviously very important, and that is making sure that we are achieving sustainability. So we wanted to get to where we are about 75% self-funded. We're a non-profit organization, and we need to always work on that and make sure that things, as I said, are very structured. So unemployment, we know in South Africa, is a big crisis, and we need to grow our economy, and that's how we need to support people. So people need to be generating a decent living wage, that we're really much focusing on that. And there are a lot of societal costs and high unemployment, which is big school dropouts that we're experiencing. And obviously crime and violence is also the ripple effects of these things. So the prolonged unemployment needs to change. And that's very much our focus area. And it's very hard for parents to invest in their children if they're not generating a revenue. So the circular economy is definitely opening a lot of opportunities for this to happen. And we see people responding very quickly. And we must never underestimate, in communities, people have been repurposing things for decades. And we need to respect that and focus on that and see how further we can support that. So in TCB, we have various different programs. Resell was our first program, started in 2010. When we realized lots of clothing is available in the retail supply chain, and we approached one of our big retailers, and they came on board very quickly with us. And that's very much where we're focusing on working with moms who are raising the next generation. And they join us for a 2-year learning journey, where we're training business skills, life skills. We do lots of support through coaching and mentoring. And within 6 weeks of joining TCB, you're going to generate a revenue. So everybody gets given a kickstart after 6 weeks of being at TCB. And they start trading their businesses. So you are earning while you're learning. It's very important. And in our repair program, one of our retail partners a few years back started to donate customer returned appliances to TCB. And we were like, okay, what are we going to be doing with those appliances? So we decided to add on the technical skills to all of our training, including so people can repair anything from a kettle all the way to a fridge. And we recruited a lot of men into that program. Women are welcome to join as well. Currently, we have about 300 men in that program and about 30 women as well, also repairing and repurposing all these appliances and also trading with them now. And another thing is they're also repairing in their communities now, damaged appliances. So that's a good thing. And then Remake is very much focusing on seamstresses, people who have basic sewing skills, but giving them access to affordable raw materials. So we are now accessing raw materials like that pre-consumer waste, which is the fabric and the trims that are also sitting in factories. So we're accessing those as well. And then our reskill program, lots of other organizations have reached out to us and said, how can we also be benefiting from what we've experienced? So we're now sharing a lot of our training out there because for TCB, it's very important to create an ecosystem for change. And you have to create the safe space where people can heal. And then when your anxiety starts to drop, you start to respond to opportunities, because it's very hard when you're stuck in survival mode to see outside the big picture. So this is very much the safe space. And we can think it's everything that we do, but actually it's the friendships that form, that sisterhood, brotherhood that forms. It's incredible what happens there, because then you start feeling safe. And you start identifying what you're interested in, and then people start obviously learning on that journey. So it's incredible. And then we have a little bit of a left field program called Grow ECD, which is Grow Early Childhood Development. Also very much focused on owners of early childhood development centers, so that we can also capacitate them to run sustainable, well-structured businesses that are really adding a lot of value to children. So children are now going to be ready for grade 1. So Grow, I won't go into too much detail of Grow, but if you're interested, please have a look at their website. It's amazing what they're doing. I think they've got over 350 Grow schools, but any school can access the Grow app. So that app can really helps schools train the children, manage their finances and assess children as well, engage with parents, etc., etc. So it's wonderful. They're also scaling that in another level. So that's 2 slides of the same thing. And then just to show you the ED program. So it's very much collecting the waste so we can respond. That's the great thing. So we can collect from back of stores. We can collect from DCs. We try and respond within 48 hours of our retail partners or wholesalers and importers contacting us. We sort all of that stock into different categories. So we've got a whole little warehouse where we sort all that. And then we distribute it into different divisions of TCB, and some of it needs to be repaired, and obviously very much focusing on developing people. And then we are then obviously making a sustainable organization so that we can really repurpose a lot of those products all the time and further support people. just to show you our network. So we have branches Cape Town, Joburg, Durban, East London, and we are also looking at other ways to scale now. So if, for example, in the repair program, it's very much everything's happening in our hubs. And now there's definitely opportunities for people to go out there and start other businesses. So we want to understand that next level now. So we're engaging with quite a few of our partners on this, how to take that to another level, where people could be starting their own hubs in different areas, where they could be repairing products and also repurposing products. And even the remake ladies could be partnering with the repair candidates. So that's something we're thinking of. And just to show you our retail partners. So we are receiving, I think, almost 2 million items a year at the moment coming through. So we obviously also end up with dead stock ourselves. We've also had to look at that and how do we repurpose those stock internally. So it's something we've also had to self-reflect. And as I mentioned, our ecosystem for change is very much focused on the head, heart, and hands. So it's taking a very holistic approach, and we call it the A to B methodology. And that really helps us all understand we've got to crack ourselves into consciousness and self-reflect a lot. And that's how we can move forward, working together. So the A to B methodology, now we're also doing some training online. So if anybody's ever interested, also you can have a little look at our website and we can connect you with this, because it's really, the methodology is about occupational intelligence. And it really helps us move forward all the time. You know, we all understand we're all hardwired somewhere in our brains. So how do we rewire our brains? And that really helps us respond to opportunities very quickly. I always say this one story. We had this lovely group of students from Stanford University used to come and volunteer. I think they were studying something at UCT, and then they would volunteer different nonprofits in Cape Town. And it was a lovely young lady volunteering at TCB and a lovely young man working at an early childhood development center in Khayelitsha. And you know, when you ask 4-year-old children questions, they tell you the truth. That's what the kids always do. And one of the questions was, what's it like living in Cape Town? And the response was, we don't live in Cape Town, we live in Khayelitsha. And that, again, cracked me into consciousness, because we have to connect people with, you know, the Table Mountain is for the whole of Cape Town. So we need to connect people with opportunities, and you mustn't underestimate that people do need the opportunity, because it's hard to respond to something if you can't be connected with it. So very much that we're focusing on doing that. Just some more stats showing you. Currently, we have 905 participants in the program, actively in the program in general. We have actually over 1,000 graduates now who are still very active. A lot of other graduates are running other businesses, because what you're learning in TCB, you can actually run in any business. Some people start a catering business, or different things, early childhood development centers, the beauty industry, different things happen. And we are obviously repurposing a lot of e-waste. So just last year alone, we did, I think it was 86 tons of e-waste that was protected from sending to landfill. That's just our A to B methodology, which is very much moving up the ladder, helping us shift. And thank you very much. That's a little snapshot of TCB.
Thanks, Tracey. I mean, all the re's. We're going to have to find a re-word for grow ECD. But yeah, all of the reads. Really inspiring, and really, a good example of what 20 for Good stands for, right? It's the intersection between sustainable development goals and job creation. Let's move to our discussion. What I'd like to first explore with each of you is looking at innovating for sustainable resource use and job creation. So you've both given examples of how it's happening on the ground and how we're solving for continental issues, advocacy, policy changes, etc. Let's get to a few more pointed questions. Tracey, just off the back of your presentation, you shared examples of how innovations in waste management and recycling are actually generating jobs and economic value. And you gave some, examples in the re's. examples and in your value chain. Could you just talk to us about some of the roles, the actual roles that are being created within that ecosystem, and how can other industries perhaps replicate the model?
Yes, yes. So it's very important to try and understand the whole supply chain, because obviously with TCB, we're focusing kind of at the end of the supply chain, but it's also good to think and reflect on the whole supply chain. So what's even happening with the resources at the beginning? So this is all opportunities to create jobs for people in the whole supply chain. So at TCB, we're very much focusing on the skills to repurpose things and to repair items. And it's just to create awareness of the opportunity out there. How do we respond to all those opportunities? So we do have amazing relationships with the retail partners. So, a lot of them also will have like cut samples. And what do they do with all the cut samples? We end up getting the cut samples and then repurposing them. Another example that we're doing right now is the whole denim take back campaign with Woolworths. So all customers can now go and take their denims to get repurposed. Woolworths are donating all those denims to us, and then our make ladies are repurposing those denims. And I think it's very important to focus on social procurement. And that's something that we're really trying to connect people with that. So I understand that health and safety is an issue. So if you're wanting to, be connected with retailers, you've got to make sure that your environment is very occupational. There's the certificates there, because that also encourages them. So it's running a very structured process is very important to do that. And I feel that in this opportunities, the next level is when you graduate is to start your own little hubs, to start your own repair hubs. And you're connecting with people in the organization, and now they're setting up their own little spaces, which is something we really want to further explore. I attended a very nice session yesterday about makerspace, and that really is really interesting because there's an opportunity there to very much explore in the whole African continent. Yes.
Thanks. And, good examples there of replication, right? And replication both of the total model and replication of the job creation, even at the micro entrepreneur and the graduates there.
Absolutely. They create jobs. Yes.
Yeah. Bezawit, how does the African Circular Economy Network promote sustainable entrepreneurship in the circular economy, especially in creating closed-loop supply chains? Are there specific regions or sectors that are particularly promising for circular economy job growth?
Thank you again. I'll start from the second question. Where does this, looking at the long-term plan, like over the course of 5-10 years along the line, which regions and which sectors would definitely have an added comparative advantage? Obviously, the university industry linkage platforms and would definitely be the ones taking advantage of the situation, because a lot of innovation takes place in those spaces. And then, of course, the continent in general is a net importer of goods and services, and the consumption is more than the production. But that trend is changing through these special economic zones, which are popping up all over the continent, either between two countries or in one country itself. Those are the places where you could introduce or mainstream circular economy concepts and principles in the production lines and in the manufacturing sector itself. But when it comes to sectors, obviously from the economic point of view, agriculture sector is the most promising one. Then you have packaging and plastics, because that's also emerging waste stream that is actually increasing in high rate. In general, the manufacturing sector. So how do we promote those sectors and regions to promote circularity? Is by providing capacity for innovative designs, product designs and services, circular products and services. It's either by giving trainings or by giving them opportunity to develop business models.
Right.
Back to you.
Let me follow on from that then. So if we start thinking, Tracey and Bezawit, around challenges and opportunities in expanding circular economy initiatives, Bezawit, from what you're saying, circular economy models often face challenges in scaling due to lack of infrastructure and investment, right? From your experience, what are the key obstacles to expanding circular economy initiatives in Africa? And how can they be addressed to unlock more employment opportunities?
In general, since the idea of this circularity is quite at its initial phases, there's a lack of interest or even a push from the investors to de-risk this kind of investments. It's the human nature. They want to invest on something that's actually working and feasible and tested. And de-risking that investment should come from either the government, public sectors, or development partners. Most interestingly, organizations like UNIDO, UNEP, AFDB are supporting this kind of programs,
Right.
shifting to this kind of programs, which supports a market development system, which can de-risk these investment opportunities. The infrastructure, I couldn't agree more. At the end of the day, the economy of scale really matters for this thing to work economically feasible, to be economically feasible. So what we promote and what we encourage is regional approach. For example, setting up an e-waste facility across the SADC countries versus one country like, say, Botswana. The economy of scale is obviously quite different. So those are the kind of things that we promote to increase the economy of scale and attract more
Right.
investments, obviously.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Those macro, macro top-down approaches, maybe
Yeah.
Tracey, let's look at it from the other way. What are some ways that smaller businesses and local entrepreneurs can overcome barriers to adopting circular practices? Are there successful partnerships or policies that have helped you or have helped your smaller businesses?
Yes, there are. There are actually. If you think about the extended producer responsibility, so now they're obviously under, I think it's the packaging, the plastics, and the e-waste is something that they have to comply with. So they're all partnering with producer responsibility organizations, and I think they're paying a certain percentage per tonnage. So that's importers, manufacturers, and retailers are partnering with PROs, and the PRO's responsibility is now to further support. So now it's also on their shoulders now to see what are they going to be doing with this revenue they're generating, and they're also looking at how they can further support, obviously, the training side of things in the industry, but also supporting small businesses. So I'm finding that there is response happening there. I think they are focusing on that a lot because they have to be accountable for that. So that's a positive thing. And then with the broad-based Black economic empowerment in South Africa, there's a scorecard there, which also encourages people to be supporting. So there's 5 different pillars on that scorecard, and we find that under TCB, it's very much enterprise development. So that's where they are supporting enterprise development and supplier development. So that social procurement is something they also are focusing in on. And they've got lots of people in their sustainability divisions now really pushing this, which I find quite positive actually out there that's happening.
Right.
And then we know that International Labour Organization, it's very worth looking at that website because they're focusing on the social solidarity economy. And that is focusing on people and the environment. And there's a whole, I think it's the African Union have got this like 10-year vision to make this happen. And so if we all can jump into that, we can feel positive about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's then move to thinking about, I think what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of big intervention. How much is actually happening on the ground? Like TCB's showing us wonderful examples, but most of this conversation sounds like all good intention from governments, multinational bodies, policymakers, advocates, capacity builders, and all of that kind of stuff. How much is actually, of this is happening on the ground? Do you feel that there is a groundswell of actual action? If we, maybe what I'm saying is from all of the action that each of you are talking about, continental action, policy intervention, capacity building, stimulation, government-led investments, et cetera, do you feel that there's actually a groundswell of jobs being created, circular economy innovations actually happening, or are we still a little too early for that?
I feel that it's certainly happening, but not at the capacity that it should be. It needs to be way more. I mean, we know we're sitting with massive unemployment challenges here. But then we need to stop and say, where are we now? And what can we respond to now? Because what happens is we start replicating that capitalism model all the time, because that's the only solution we can think of. And so it's a massive challenge. Absolutely. We've got to innovate and test and be courageous and work together, because we can't do this on our own.
Right. Bezawit, what do you think? Is there enough results out of all this work, I suppose, is what my question is saying.
I am actually quite optimistic when I see works that were just presented by organizations like Tracey's. There's this understanding that over the course of the full-fledged implementation, 6 to 20 million green circular economy jobs will be created. So people always, especially government entities, ask, where are those jobs going to be created, and what kind of jobs are we going to put in place, and what kind of jobs are we really asking to be considered as circularity? And then it makes you wonder, those are the small jobs, like, for example, soft skills that really need to change the consumer behavior is considered as a circular job. The technical skills doesn't necessarily have to be someone developing a full, like a factory car, but repairing the batteries, the electric car batteries, is a circular job. Full-fledged design of a laptop is doesn't necessarily has to be that. It could be dismantling the modules and reusing it and refurbishing it. Those are the kind of jobs that I believe are considered as circular jobs. The designers are already doing, the policy designers and practitioners are already doing green jobs, environmental management. But how about those additional jobs on fostering innovation? Those are the new jobs that will be in place. Data analysis, AI, technology, digital literacy. Those are the kind of jobs that will be created. And hopefully we need it more, because Africa has a lot of young unemployed and also educated youth, at least university level.
Yeah, what's striking to me is we're quantifying the opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Tens of millions of jobs. We're driving the policy interventions, right, et cetera, and we have incredible entrepreneurs like Tracey at TCP that are creating economically sustainable jobs for good at the base of the pyramid. Wonderful story to tell. Is there a missing player? Let's talk an economic player here, which is mass scale entrepreneurs. Where I wonder are the examples of entrepreneurs that are going to be bringing a TCB type of initiative at grand scale, or a waste conversion at grand scale. So there you have a single entrepreneur that's going to become incredibly wealthy out of a circular economy and initiative, right? Because they are able to scale continent wide, for example, be in every country, etc. I mean, I remember the one example of the converting tires that came out of, I think it was Nigeria, converting car tires into roads, into bricks for houses and all that kind of stuff. But even when we look at that example, that's quite a small enterprise, entrepreneur with such an incredible concept, but remains a small enterprise with probably single production, etc. Is there a missing middle? I'm wondering, should we be, or do venture capital funds exist on the continent that focus on finding these brilliant ideas and capitalizing them in such a way that they can scale and take, in Tracey's terms, thousands of jobs to hundreds of thousands of jobs. What are your thoughts about, is there something missing here?
I can reflect on that. The missing link, for example, for countries like Ethiopia, when compared to countries like Kenya, is a Startup Act policy, for example. In a country where you have a policy which kind of encourages and enables the young entrepreneurs and business accelerator programs to flourish and get the opportunity to exercise their designing skills and take risks with the backup of a policy that gives them the financial access to finance, access to working space, access to information and technology, creates that little bridge that makes them more interested to upscale their products. So a lot of countries are investing in developing the startup acts. Nigeria followed, Egypt followed. And then also, of course, South Africa has even ended up having a facility for funding these startup acts. But those are the small, that's one thing that actually can bring that uh, policy gap that could actually address the challenge faced by startups and accelerators. Because then they will have the opportunity to relax and take more time to absorb the shocks that requires their building their capacity or investment and things like that. Back to you, Teresa. Back to you, Gavin.
Yeah, it's
Tracey,
interesting.
anything about the missing, is there a missing link?
I think as humans, we're very competitive, actually. There's something in our DNA, and we don't share enough. So sometimes people come up with a great idea, but they will struggle to share it. So, there's amazing universities, like there's an incredible university in Australia doing amazing work. And they've created some wonderful things, but they won't just share them out, So I think it's something we've got to think about, that radical collaboration is something we've got to start being a bit braver on. So I think they talk about being inclusive, cooperative, being responsive, those kind of things. But it's not something that we are that good at as humans. So we just need to be a little braver.
And it is the African way, right? So you mentioned capitalist approaches. I'm not saying that Africa isn't capitalist, but a capitalist, protect its, find capital for it and grow it. The African way is different, right? We take an idea, we share it, we find partners, we approach it from an Ubuntu perspective, and together we create scale. I'm going to put a pin in this, but I think the point that I'm making is, where is the Patrice Motsepe investing $10 million in a circular economy entrepreneur to create 1 million jobs? Right. Sorry, Patrice, I doubt you're watching this, but right, where are the African billionaires, the African capital funds that are really taking this stuff seriously and scaling this? So this is just for me a real insight out of this call about all the good work that's being done at the base and at a macro government intervention level, but where is the capital? You mentioned inclusivity, so let's take it back down to the base, right? So a question for you both. Many of these jobs in the circular economy require new skill sets or roles that haven't existed before. How can organizations ensure that these jobs are accessible to diverse groups, including women and youth? And what specific skills or training programs do you see as essential for an inclusive workforce? So, Tracey, you've given us wonderful examples of how your models are definitely woman-centric, and examples of how, while it seems that the ribbon that goes through that model is skills or training development. Maybe Bezawit, you can comment on that. How are you seeing other ways that the circular economy is being inclusive of women, youth, and maybe comment on the importance of skills or training programs to get us there?
Yes, so I'll give an example from the action plans that we develop for national governments or for specific development partners. What we do is we kind of prioritize short-term vision, mid-term vision, and the long-term vision, where action plans are actually implemented in different phases. And in the first phase, what we usually recommend and what we also believe is that having soft skills in place really makes a big difference. To whom? It's usually TVET schools, training. These are technology vocational TVET schools that are between high school and university. It's more about skills, hand that they can use to generate income for themselves. And then the second group of organizations or target audience for those capacity building initiatives that we recommend are these business accelerator programs. These are fresh young graduates from universities, are full of ideas. Well, obviously, don't have enough financing support, but with the will to try and new things and ideas and develop, design new ideas. So that's where we also try to inject these circular solutions and skills. And of course, the other third group of targets that we include are the policymakers and practitioners. Uh, it doesn't necessarily has to be a master's or a PhD program, but short, tailored professional programs that are actually targeted to help them monitor what a circular products and services is. For example, for a financial institution, with the microfinance institutions get a lot of requests projects, but they don't have the capacity to. So in general, they block. But the thing is, with that kind of skill, they will have that capacity to prioritize and filter. So those are the places that we think are uh, low-hanging fruits where we could build capacity at a more practical level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tracey, actually, let me turn the question around because you've answered quite a lot today about inclusion. Your model is, so focused on inclusion. What are the barriers to inclusion, right? Whether women or youth, what barriers? What are the real blockers that you've had to overcome?
I think that's particularly why we've even focusing on the ECD centres now, because it starts there at the age level to capacitate people and prepare people for the future. So we're always talking to everyone about conceive, believe, talk, walk, act. So it's having strengths-based conversations, which is so important because we can get so spiraled down in negativity. So it's very much focusing also on youth, definitely at different levels. We were even doing some early childhood development stuff, but then we started doing basic financial literacy, even in high schools, to see how we could support that in further ways, just to prepare people. So as you say, we very much work on that level where we're working with people in person all the time. So we feel that there's a big shift, big change that happens with that. So our focus is very much on practical training and practical opportunities, but helping people shift from being stuck in survival mode, moving and seeing that bigger picture all the time, which is really, really hard to do. But we can, and we can share all that training content out there, the learning content out there. But it's also, it's even more about the engagement. It's those relationships that really make things change. That's very much we focus on.
I suppose there might be even, well, not might, I suppose there are even more, the only word that's coming to mind is basic, but these are actually quite complex, more basic barriers to inclusion. So, for example, transport, right? How do they get to these opportunities? A bigger example, how do we make youth actually aware that these kind of opportunities exist? How do we connect the Khayelitsha to Cape Town in the example that you gave? Right, I can imagine that we have disenfranchised youth everywhere, and if we see everything that's available on social media and everything everything else that's available, you don't quite see a lot of opportunities, right? That are driving that are being driven through these social media channels, or at least I don't see that. And so I think part of it may be is, how do we discover the innovations that youth and women that aren't connected to these opportunities already have in their heads, right? Maybe it's a little patronizing for us to take these big macroeconomic intervention approaches only. Maybe there are examples out there of where we're actually trying to extract ideas and innovation from the youth and get them excited and connected. Okay, let's go to a question from the audience. So thank you both. Let's see how our audience wants to learn more. We have a question from Mulugeti Mbiali. I hope I'm doing you justice in pronouncing your name, who works in microfinance in Ethiopia. The skill gaps, especially in the areas of digitalization and innovation, is huge while the economy is demanding. What practical training opportunities can be accessed to upskill, particularly in digitalization and innovation? Does digital play a role in circular economy? Beza, Tracey?
Yes, it does. I mean, digital technology is it's actually one of the areas where circular innovation can actually happen in practice. For example, smart agricultural solutions, e-commerce, and digital analysis of data online, information processing. These are the kind of digital skills that are actually considered as circular. And in particular, for how to upskill this kind of organization, this kind of trainings, again, I still go back to tailored programs, not necessarily full-fledged programs, master classes, which actually focus on specific kind of skills that are required, for example, for an organization to sell its products online. A very good example in Ethiopia, for example, is there is an organization that rents out agricultural equipment materials, the equipment themselves, like the tractors, the plows, and not every farmer can afford those kind of equipments to buy, for one, and it's also not economically feasible. But through that platform, they can rent it, the product as a service. That's considered as circular. They don't really have to own the product, but they buy the service, they rent the service. That is possible through this kind of digital platforms that are created to digital tech solutions. Waste itself, no, the amount of waste generated in this one part of in the part of the city can be bought by another entrepreneur who is working on black soldier fly in another area. But if that information is not easily available on an hand, like for example on a mobile, or if it is available, it makes things more faster and easier. So those are the kind of things and trainings that we promote in support, actually.
Tracy, you shared an example during our tour of Facebook Marketplace. Tell us a little bit about how your community is accessing Facebook Marketplace specifically.
So part of our training includes computer training. So it's basic Microsoft and Google training. And that gives people also access to marketing using social media as a marketing platform. So that's been very impactful. And particularly when you've got appliances, it's nice to be able to sell them on Marketplace, because it's sometimes easier to do that. So we see a lot of that happening. There's Jaeger, people are selling clothing on Jaeger. There's lots of different platforms there. And on the e-waste side of things now, also repurposing laptops and computers is giving people access to affordable things now. Because if you're wanting to run your business more sustainably, you want to manage your finances, it is much nicer to be able to have access to a laptop for that. And that just grows your skills. And a lot of the moms, I had a meeting with quite a few of the graduates the other day asking the question, we do all this computer training, what's actually happening? Is it really benefiting you? Because you don't have laptops and things like that. And they were all saying it's incredibly impactful, because when their children are in school, they can help their children also be learning through basic computer literacy. So we've had positive feedback on that. So that was a good question and definitely opportunity.
Right. So maybe, skills gaps, digitalization and innovation. I suppose the skills gaps are also linked to the digital divide on the continent. If 50%, less than 50% of the continent, I believe, have access to smartphones, we know that the cost of data, for example, here in South Africa, is the entry level cost of data is such that it doesn't bring base unemployed youth and women into the systems. But perhaps if those macro issues were solved, then we'd be able to focus on almost like digital platform training. I've seen quite a bit coming out of Caribou Digital on the research that they've done on connecting folks to digital platform training. On innovation, I think I go back to my previous point is I'd be curious, not that we have time today, but I'd be curious to see, and if the audience knows of any of these interventions, or if either of you do, please bring it to our attention, of how are we pulling innovation out of disenfranchised youth? How are we sitting in the environments that they're sitting in, trying to capture their ideas and perhaps figuring out how we can build on those ideas and make them the entrepreneurs that they could be. So we have another question there. How can research and data development help in circular economy innovation, job creation? And I think that'll be our last question. So any thoughts, Tracey or Beza? Anyone want to take that one on?
Well, the first thing, for the past 5-6 years since this idea of circularity has been in the wider community and arena, the first thing a lot of organizations do is scoping study. Do we have enough supporting data and information that actually convinced whoever is interested to invest in the circular products and services, including governments, the number of jobs created? Is it really quantifiable? Is the income generated monetized in such a way that the economic feasibility is attractive enough for people to invest in? Those are the kind of data that the first donor or multilateral partner asks whenever an organization or an government goes to them. So what most countries are doing, and also I can share what we're doing, is we're developing investment documents together with the action plans. The cost benefit analysis is something that we actually do go extra mile to support our clients, so that they would go to a potential partner and say, this is how much we're going to make, this is how much you're going to invest, and this is the return in terms of jobs, in terms of income, in terms of environmental footprints and greenhouse gas emission reduction and things like that, with evidence and data. So those are the kind of things that data and research would definitely help. Back to you, Gavin.
Research is very helpful. I can just mention quickly, we use the green light movement. So we obviously assess a lot of our own surveys. So we do surveys at baseline, 12 months, and again at 24 months. And there's 52 different indicators on there in 6 different dimensions. So that is showing, is there movement happening? Is there progress? It's important to do it. Good point.
Thank you both. A marathon session today. But let me maybe just summarize what I've heard. lots happening macro level, intercontinental level, lots of good intention from governments, government bodies, wonderful examples of circular economy interventions at the base of the pyramid, women's inclusion, youth inclusion, and innovation there. What seems to be, and lots of solutions for skilling, for reskilling, for connecting to digital platforms, right? But even with all of this work, there seems to yet be a groundswell of job creation, right? So all the ideas, all the policies, all the interventions, but still not yet a groundswell, right? Maybe in green jobs overall, the best example is in green energy for right now. But in circular economy, we have a way to go to get this going. One solution would be, let's try and find out where private capital is on this that can scale some of these innovations. Another solution is, let's also try and extract the innovations out of the youth, the disenfranchised youth, to see where the ideas are. Yes, thank you both for your time and for joining us today. We look forward to the other sessions this afternoon, which include agri-tech and a networking session on 20 for Good. Thank you both.